Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Be Your Own Boss. Our guest this week is Sandeep Nath, the founder of the RENEWALism Movement, the author of Arrive at Success and Renewal, two very successful books, very well known books. And Sandeep is an entrepreneur in the space of consciousness. Let's hear from Sandeep about his story, his journey. Sandeep, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on the Be Your Own Boss podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sachin. It's an absolute delight and an honor to be with you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So, Sandeep, like we always do on the Be Your Own Boss podcast, let's start with your story right from the beginning. Tell us about your childhood, your parents, your siblings, and your childhood memories.
Lord. So my base has been Delhi. My grandparents were in Delhi, and I spent the first about first 10 or say 11 years of my life in 14 different places. And that's when in class 6 I was brought back to Delhi and high school, and therefore I stayed with my grandparents for my senior school, while my father, who was in the railways, was traveling all over the place. So this was the time, in fact, when I was in the ninth, the board exams and all that stuff. That's when my dad got posted to Iraq. So they left me with my grandparents to finish senior school. And then when he came back from Iraq, he went to Calcutta. I got into the IIT. I went to Banaras. And I didn't see them for a good 11 years with, 4 years of that in Iraq. And then the job, I was back in Delhi working here. Yeah. And after 11 years, I was like so sick of working in Delhi and working for somebody else that I went to Hyderabad, where he was posted at that time, and went to catch up with the family. So long story short, I think I'm already about 25 now, and I'm in Hyderabad, and that's where I set up my own enterprise. But happy to share any instances in the middle if any part of the IITian story is of any value to the listeners.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about that part of those. So growing up with in different cities and then later on in Delhi. With that kind of an environment, did you have aspirations that you want to become a businessman one day?
Well, that's a great question. If you had asked me when I was in the 11th what I wanted to do, I would have said I'm going to fly planes, and I would have been a pilot. In fact, I got through the NDA, and I got that letter, the presidential order that you've been appointed and all that sort of stuff. It gives a big kick before you finish school also. But that's when I had this conversation with my dad, and he's an IITian. And so he said, look, I just want you to finish your schooling and write the exam. And if you don't get through, then you write the NDA again. And this is, of course, waiting, and it's a good job. It's a government job, and go for it. But just finish your schooling, have a backup, write that exam, and that's things change, then I wrote that exam. So things were never the same thereafter. But that led to a couple of very interesting things for me by way of learnings. And the first of them is the learning about having a purpose in life. Because when you are working against your purpose, like my purpose was probably flying in freedom, and I was here in an engineering college. By third year engineering, I had glasses. At that time, it looked good, like an engineer with glasses. You look academic, even though I wasn't very academic, but it added to the profile. But later, a good 21 years later, at the age of 37, 38, is when I figured that was the first sign of stress. When you're working against purpose, you are starting to get stressed. And you don't know the word at that age. But I'll tell you later how that came about and how I discovered the importance of working in alignment with purpose to be stress-free and relaxed. So that's kind of was a great learning at that point in time. Business was never in the picture. I was driven to being a consultant. I was driven to being on my own when I reached Hyderabad.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
not in the early
So
years.
yeah, so, and tell us about that. Like just before that, you were working in Delhi. Once you finished your education, and you went to IIM, right?
Yes, I
Or
did. That was
yeah.
while I was in Hyderabad because it is funny, Sachin. I was being invited to give guest lectures at IIPM and ICFAI and various places. And when they would introduce me, I didn't have that MBA tag also. So for the purpose of that, I enrolled in the IIM Cozy Code, did a program there while I was running my company, and that helped the biodata, that helped me check off some of those square boxes that we're supposed to. And of course, it was business as usual. Of course, I was doing very well before that and after that.
So when you were working in Delhi, what kind of jobs was it? And like, tell us about that. When you entered into the job market and started working after your education, what kind of profile, what kind of job was that?
Okay, that takes me back to a very interesting time in my life again. And I'm glad you asked because it's kind of refreshing memories. There were a lot of jobs available on campus, and I got into some of those startup companies in Jamshedpur. But that when I went there for the campus for the final interviews and stuff like that, it wasn't the kind of place I wanted to be in. So I was, I guess, quite choosy how to think of it. So I came back to Delhi and I applied for a few interviews here in companies that were uh, on the border of engineering and marketing. So, electronic typewriters, NIIT was very new those days. And I got through about three, four companies. These are two names I definitely remember, the HCL Group and NIIT. And I chose the HCL Group company network selling electronic typewriters. It was electronics. It was top of the line technology those days. And we're talking about 1989.
Yeah.
So now you guys are guessing my age, but or rather calculating it. But guys, that was a very important lesson because the first thing I did was selling electronic typewriters, getting my hands dirty, doing something which the average salary of my peers would have been double that from campus or from regular jobs, engineering jobs. But I wanted to get into the sales and marketing area because something told me at that very time that if you cannot get your message across, then you can be as great as God's manna, but nobody knows. So it also was very important for me to be independent. And uh, again, like I told you, my parents weren't there. I was taking my grandparents. So I wanted to just take care of my expenses on my own, buy my bike, and so my commissions paid for all of that, and my salary was actually pocket money. All that feels damn good when you're that age.
Yeah.
And then I moved to advertising because now I was sure that yes, marketing, sales, I can divorce engineering easily without any strings attached. And I moved to advertising, moved to branding, and then when I went to Hyderabad, I moved as a creative consultant.
Hmm. And here's a very important point you brought now, which is the importance of sales. Like working as a salesman in life is so, it's like an institute in itself, right? When you work in sales and when you're able to sell and you're able to market yourself, this is where you're able to put your point across, like you just said. So
Right.
with that, then and then you move to Hyderabad. And when did this idea or this thought of like being your own boss came to you, and how did that tell us about that time of your life when you started that? Okay, I'm gonna work for myself.
Okay, so that was a default thing because I discovered in all the time that I worked with these companies in advertising and marketing, and the good companies. I was with Grey Advertising, and very good community award-winning company and all that. But I couldn't be anybody reporting to anybody. I couldn't have a boss. So default mode was I had to be my own boss. And so when I went to Hyderabad, it was a clean slate. And I decided that I'm not applying to any company here. I'm going to just sell my abilities and my availability. And so I positioned myself as uh, again God's manna from Delhi to the poor peasants in advertising in Hyderabad, and started consulting to a few agencies. From where I started consulting to clients, from where I set up a consulting company, and life was great.
Right.
So
So
I was
it's
my own boss right back there in 1993.
yeah. So in today's terms, you would call, like, you were doing freelancing when you came to Hyderabad and you started working as a consultant on your own, right? And
Yeah.
would you call that a
In
freelance?
in today's jargon, we wouldn't call it freelancing. 10 years ago, you'd have called it that. In today's parlance, I was the gig economy guy. I used to get my own gigs.
Yeah, the gig economy. Yes. So, and tell us about that part. Like when you came to Hyderabad. Like now, your dad was there in Hyderabad, but you didn't. I don't know if you already knew certain people there. How did you go about marketing yourself as, like? How did you tell Hyderabad, the city, that look, Sandeep Nath is here and he's available for consulting?
You ask very good questions, Sachin. I really appreciate that. So this, helped me dig into that time when I had moved towards the end of the year, and I said, let me use the New Year card as the opportunity. This was way before digital media, right? This was like 1993. We're talking about. We still had the yellow pages in those days, and that's what I fished out the yellow pages and the agencies there designed a card with a very nice message that cut across and expressed my creative ability and positioned myself for a conversation. And it's just those conversations that lead to things that I knew from my interviews just after college as well. Once you can position yourself in front of somebody, then you either get your message across or you don't. Both ways work for you because you know where you're going at least. But otherwise, if you can't have that eye to eye thing, you're always just wondering, is this going to work out? You think you're on track, but you're basically just fooling yourself and killing time. So that's what I didn't do. By January, I had two retainerships, and by the next 3 years, I had three awards, uh, running awards of Campaign of the Year. So, like by 95, I was the hottest copywriter and creative consultant in town.
Wow. So that's
Really
quite a
modest.
success.
Extremely modest. But you did that to me. You asked me to go back to all those years.
This is very very important because like I'm thinking from the audience perspective, people who are at their job and they're good at what they do, what they do, and they if they aspire to be consultants. Here's the path. Here's someone who has already done it, and this is the path that you took. You came to a new city, you scanned through the yellow pages, you went and approached people and positioned yourself, and were bold enough to put yourself out there and say that this is what I can do for you, and then um, back those projects.
Absolutely, Sachin. You've got to be very clear on what value you bring to your audience and get that clarity across. That's all. I would say this is educating the person you're sitting in front of them. It is not selling to them. They buy you because they're educated about what it is that they want. What is it?
Mm.
What is the need of theirs that you're filling? And if there isn't one, then it's just another good person to know.
Yeah. So identifying need is important when it comes to selling. So identifying the need and then educating them on that subject, and the sale happens. Right. And what was your next step then? Once you started, like once you established yourself as a consultant and you're now your own boss, you're based in Hyderabad. What was the next phase of your life?
So I was doing multiple retainerships with the advertising agencies, and I had a few clients of my own. And getting those clients of my own was important because it made sure that I could have some sort of a consistency in the strategic approach that I was bringing to the client organizations. And sometimes, the agencies are not able to sustain that because of various other variables, including losing the account. And that really was upsetting, because you've got a certain plan for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years for a particular brand, and then you're not working with them anymore, or somebody else has got an ego that goes into that. So working with clients gave me that. And then I started working with clients from about 95 onwards, on to about 97, 98, when I set up my own company. And this was a company which was focused on integrated marketing communications, and working on strategic objectives of the brand, and building tactics through an event management company, through an advertising agency, and various filmmaking companies, and various web design companies, which were part of a network. So we called it the Consultative Network. It was a private limited company. We had a pretty active board, and we did some pretty solid work over the next 10 years.
Right. And so you set up a company, and did you also hire people? And then it was like,
I had a lean team. I had about 15, 20 people at any point in time, but we had a very strong network which was delivering a lot of value in various areas of marketing communication, strung together on a strategy.
Brilliant. Okay.
I was also a serial entrepreneur those days, so I had my ventures in a software company and an event management company, and then we uh, merged with another advertising agency, which then those directors came on board and they became part of the consultative network. So we had media buying also at that point in time. So by about 2003, 2004, we were pretty well set and doing pretty well.
And so what happened after that? What happened to the company that you set up? What happened after that?
Well, the company that I set up is around in a different form, because what happened around 2003, 4, 5, those were the years when two things happened. One, I wanted to globalize. And so I looked at partnerships in Singapore and Malaysia, and um, basically there, I was thinking I had some talks going on in Dubai, but I didn't go to Dubai. But I went to these places, met up with Singapore was very, very strong in branding, very, very established agencies over there. But for some reason, that did not work out. We went forward, we went backwards, and it was the classical thing of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and it was not quite turning out the way that I would have wanted it to, and becoming a global network in that sense. We of course had a letterhead which said Singapore, Malaysia, India, all that sort of jazz. But like if you are an entrepreneur in those stages, it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to know that that's what you're actually doing. That's the value that you're actually bringing. So you can use that, you can leverage that, but what is it that you're doing that only you know as an entrepreneur? The other thing that happened was that I started finding that the way we've designed our businesses, not my business, but my clients' businesses, and the way that we have structured systems around, like being in Hyderabad, I had a lot of clients in the IT, ITES, and BPO industry, and especially in the BPO industry, where we've designed ourselves to work against the clock, so to say, against the biorhythm, and have hundreds of thousands of kids in their 20s coming in and taking that up as the best job that they could get, the highest paying job, greatest work environment. You get Kit Kats and 5 stars at your workplace, and you have a gym and whatever else you need. Nothing that you use except the 5 stars, but but just to have that, it gave me a feeling that we are misplacing the word I want to use here is consciousness. We've got a misplaced consciousness about how to build the next generation and where to focus on for their betterment. Again, working with consumer products companies, I was on the side which was saying that, yeah, open this packet, eat the stuff, it's healthy, it's convenient, it's cool. But I knew that if you're eating out of packets, you are doing harm to the system. You're moving away from nature, which is what has sustained us for hundreds and thousands of years. So how can suddenly in 10, 20, 30, 50 years, our internal body system start accepting that as correct, and it's got to have repercussions? I didn't know what the repercussions were. But today we know, if you look back at 2003 and 2023, 20 years, hospitals, stress, all of that has gone up like exponentially. And I didn't want to be part of the problem. I didn't have a solution. So we continued business as usual, kind of not scaling up because I was searching myself. And that's what sort of started a second phase in my thought process. And that was around 2006-07, when a gentleman called Robert Kiyosaki came into my life through a book called Cash Flow Quadrant. I tell you, Sachin, that's a book I would recommend each and every viewer, listener to read and study, and digest and munch right now. Stop this podcast. I have nothing more to say. Read that. Robert Kiyosaki, Cash Flow Quadrant. That's when the sort of big shift happened in my life.
Yeah. Wow. That's big. Yeah. I mean, the cash flow quadrant is a very, very important, life changing book. Rich Dad Poor Dad is, of course, and the cash flow quadrant.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want me to talk
what
about
happened? Yes, please. Yeah. How did cash flow quadrant change your life? Tell us about it.
All right. So, what is the cash flow quadrant? For people who don't know, I have quoted that in my book called Arrive at Success, which is available on Amazon and all leading portals across the world. And right here in the preface of it is the cash flow quadrant that you will see, right? So you see this E, S, B, and I. On the left side are E and S, employees and self-employed. On the right side are B and I, business owners and investors. Just understand this. The left mentality is of exchanging time for money. The right mentality is exchanging assets for money. You build the asset, let the asset work for you. You stop working. You use a system. The B quadrant is different from the S quadrant because the B quadrant uses a system. Whereas the S quadrant, the self-employed, the small business is the system. And I was the system. I had a consultative network, but I had to be looking at the network. I had a private limited company, but I had to be doing the paperwork. I had 20 employees, but it often happened at the end of the month, and you will relate to this, many of you. I was asking myself the question, are these 20 guys working for me or am I working for them? Because I'm the one who's trapped in bringing those cash flows, and they're going to get their salaries anyway. The E and the S have no leverage. If they work, they earn. If they don't work, they don't earn. And that's not what I'd bargained for. By this time, I'd finished my IIM and nobody taught me the cash flow quadrant there also. What I was bargaining for was for a system-based business or an approach to systems which I could learn and start applying. And that's what I started doing. And one of the systems that came my way, which is what I say in the preface of this book, is the publishing system. It's there. So you publish a book, it goes into the system, you earn royalties, and you have time independence. another system that's very beautiful and very misunderstood, because most of us are we are trained and conditioned in the left side, not the E and S side. We're not trained and conditioned by B quadrant and investors. So we try to operate the business of network marketing using the left side knowledge, and try to do things ourselves without leveraging a system, without leveraging a team, without leveraging a B quadrant mindset, which is available to us. I didn't make that mistake. I read the book. I figured out how to build network marketing. I discovered that some of the people of the highest consciousness are part of network marketing companies. Because what is consciousness? That's where it's not dog eat dog. That's not where you're in the rat race. That's not where you are telling people to work against the biorhythm and earn pots of money. It's not where you're asking people to open packets and eat and think that that's cool and healthy. It is where they are genuinely invested in ensuring that you get successful. But because so few people really understand that, this industry does not uh, does not become the vehicle for so many masses. And that's again logical as per Kiyosaki, because 90% of the people are on the left side and they'll stay there. But the 10% on the right side who get it are the 10% who are moving from here through vehicles like network marketing. So that's what I started exploring. And for some reason, I always had this network. My company in 97 was called the Consultative Network. He says poor people work, referring to the left, rich people network, referring to the right. And you just understand how to operate those networks. The second thing that happened, Sachin, is that I was exploring answers for this question of consciousness. And again, something told me that the answers to consciousness can only come from a spiritual master. And being in Hyderabad, there are so many spiritual masters close by. And I was so fortunate to have easy access to people like Satya Sai Baba, who was alive then, Sri Sri, Nityananda, um, very, very many of them, Baba, uh, Amma and Bhagwan also. I had gone to their ashram. So there were so many, each of whom I learned from, I took snippets from, and I started integrating Vedic wisdom into my understanding of what things are. And finally, it was a gentleman who's running the Sahaj Marg called Shariji. He not running in the sense he was a spiritual head at that time, which has now become the Heartfulness Foundation. And he suggested to me that if you really want to understand consciousness and energy was like, I understood that there is something very critical about energy, because that's what makes us all move. The body, mind, spirit. The body we understand, the mind little we understand, but spirit we understand the least. And spirit is energy, and energy drives everything. So we ought to understand the most of that, but we understand the least of that. So the guys who understand the most of that are the guys who preserved this knowledge and practiced with this knowledge for more than 1,000 years up there in the Himalayas. They're called Tibetan Lamas. Go there. And 2010, Sachin, I handed my company over to the other directors, and it's, like I said, morphed into a different thing altogether now. It doesn't concern me, not attached to it. It's more than 13 years now. But I found myself in the monasteries up there.
In the Himalayas.
In the Himalayas.
Wow. So the monk who sold his Ferrari. The book, the monk who sold his Ferrari. So you're like that. A businessman who handed over your business to your partners, and you went to the Himalayas. Wow.
Yes. So I say that because when I talk to entrepreneurs, and I talk to a lot of you guys, and I'm always available to talk. You can just hop across to sandeepnath.com and book a time with me. I always find a lot of you have this feeling that when the time comes, I will. I want you to know that the time is now. It's come. And if you do, things will change. If you keep doing what you're doing, you will get the same results. So you got to just do it. And I just did it. and the results were completely different.
Wow. Tell us a little more about this. But before this, I've got one question that about the cash flow quadrant here. I'm going to go back for that to that for a moment, and then we'll come back to the Himalayas story here. Okay. So you mentioned about the right side of the quadrant and the left side of the quadrant, right?
Mhm.
And so practically, how does one shift from the left to the right, from the ENS to BNI? What's the best?
How did you get into the ENS? Let's be straight. How did you get into the ENS? You spent 16 goddamn years studying.
Yes.
Employees taught you. Self-employed people taught you. Are you
Yes. It was
willing to
all the
put
left
16
quadrant.
months learning from a B quadrant? Are you willing to put 16 months? There are people in network marketing who are willing to give that 16 months to you free. Are you willing to take it up? And I'm saying 16 months is a long time. And just using the number 16 because we spend so much time conditioning ourselves in the wrong side. We have spent 16 years conditioning ourselves from employees and self-employed people. I challenge you to spend 16 months learning from a B quadrant person. And network marketing gives you those kind of people who are willing to teach you free of cost and change your mindset forever. That's what's important. So I'm using the number 16 only because you spent 16 years, but much faster than that. You will learn because you learn how to leverage, how to create teams, and then you apply that knowledge to be a more successful E and an S. I have so many people who have been vice presidents of companies and moved higher much faster because of application of the principles that they learned from the B quadrant.
Mm. That's very very important here. And so learning from the entrepreneurs, learning from businessmen. This is part of what we do here on the Be Your Own Boss podcast as well. Like we're bringing in the businessmen, bringing in the entrepreneurs, so that we all can learn, including me myself. We can learn from the B and the I quadrant people here. And so coming back to the Himalayas part now, like I promised, we'll just digress for a little bit, and I'll come back to the Himalayas story. So when you said that in search of that to learn about energy, you were guided to go to the Himalayas. What does that practically mean? Break that down for us. You handed over your company, and then what happened? Where did you go exactly?
All right. So to break it down, this word energy, it confounds us. It is, like I said, we don't connect with it as much, even though it is an integral part of the Trinity that we are formed of. Let us say, Sachin and viewers, if you are feeling happy, you would say to a friend, I am in high, fill in the blank,
Energy, high
maybe,
spirit,
or
high spirit.
spirit, right?
Yeah.
These words are equivalent to each other. That's spirit. High spirits, low spirits, free spirit, outer spirits. The spirit is willing, but the body won't move. That sort of thing. Now, that spirit drives us because it is part of the trinity of body, mind, and spirit. Well, we are so conditioned. Again, this is not 16 years of conditioning. This is maybe 1600 years of conditioning. I'll tell you this. 1600 years means about 400, maybe 2400 years of conditioning, because 400 BC or thereabouts, if you see the civilization at that point in time, everybody was their own boss. Be your own boss is not new. Be your own boss is natural to human beings. It's only when governance systems started, Julius Caesar, all that jazz, kingdoms, kings paying for peasants to do things, that's when this aspiration of getting money for something, exchanging time for money, started. Otherwise, we were all farmers, we were all traders, we were all doing some value, creating some value to get some money or to get some exchange. Barter was the exchange, maybe 400 BC. That is the basic exchange of our spirit. Now, these 2,400 years, we have become further and further away from this spiritual exchange and converted that spirituality into a religion. So, when you kill the spirit and it becomes a dead body, that's when it becomes a religion. That's when governments are formed. That's when companies are formed. That's when we get mechanized. That's when we get obsessed with the body form of ourselves. And then we know that there's a mind form because it's ruling the body, but we really don't know the exchange of mind and body. We don't know how. And this is something I'm going to take a diversion here. We don't know how our mind can heal our body. At the age of 38, I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, I discovered that I was stressed as a 17-year-old teenager. I discovered that because of another great book. And this is the time Kiyosaki came. This is the time the second most profound book of my life came, one by Louis Hay, called Heal Your Life. And Louis Hay has done a lifetime of research in the mind-body connection and how you can use the mind, program the mind to heal the body. I got rid of my spectacles, no surgery, nothing. At the age of 38, with 1 year of affirmations as recommended by Louis Hay, I manifested the mind over the body. And there's no looking back, 15 years, been seeing everything perfectly. So took that diversion because we know a little bit about the mind, but not too much. And the energy is the most subtlest form. But that's the form we're actually all connected with. If you and I, Sachin, met each other in person, we would probably, I'm risking it here, but I would probably just jump up and give you a hug like I've known you for the last, whatever, chuddy buddies.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know from Adam. You're a guy who's met me on Zoom a few times, and here we are doing this interview together. But there's an energetic connection that's happening, even though you are where you are and I am here in Gurgaon. We knew these spiritual connections. We work with spirit. We have to rediscover that. And that is what I did in the last 15 years.
Right. And so coming back to also, when you transition to, like, you made a big change in your life and you went to Himalayas, right? And so tell us more about that, like the life there, or what did you do there for a living, and what did you learn?
All right. So this is the smart thing about the B quadrant. When you build up your assets, you don't have to do anything for a living. The assets pay you. And that's what I did. What I did to pass my time and to learn was read a lot and interacted a lot with the lamas and practiced a lot. And those practices continued this very day, thanks to which I started discovering the inner power that each one of us has. And this inner power has the ability to change your outer reality. So it's like like a bulb. The bulb lights up the whole room when the inner power is activated. The filament has power going through it. If the filament has no power going through it, the room stays dark. So the outer reality of the bulb changes, and along with it, the person who's holding the bulb with a torch, and they see the room in a different way. So similarly, when we have this inner power within us, we are able to change what happens around us. And what happened around me was I wanted to get away from the disturbing corporate life. I didn't have any solutions. I didn't want to be part of the problem. So I started working in villages, and I worked with women empowerment using solar power and microgrids and creating micro entrepreneurs. In fact, I was part of the team that brought in the no frills banking accounts to villages. Spent about 6 years, did about 500 villages across 23 states. Very, very gratifying experience.
Wow. Wow. Fantastic. And tell us about your the book Renewalism, or the book Renewal, when because this is also related to that, right? I mean, you wrote Renewal and the Renewalism movement. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Great. So thanks for asking. So 2016 is when I had been working with Inner Power and had been seeing a lot of positive developments within and around me and my family. And my wife and I, we love to travel. So she wasn't often on these remote village travels that I used to do, but we always had this thing about exploring the world. And so we started doing that. And 2016 to 2019 is when we have conducted workshops on inner power, energy, meditation, mindfulness, and stuff like that, and especially on Qigong, which is working with energy, and Reiki and things like that, across about more than 40 cities in 4 continents. And 2019 is when I was in Mexico, and I had some time on hand because my wife was involved with a project of some reconstruction over there at that point in time. And I was sitting in November just wondering how to use my time well. And this word renewal came to me. And in 40 days, Sachin, I kid you not, I don't know how that happened. It was what I have written in the preface of the book. This is the book. I've written that this book was channeled to me. I'm not the writer. 240 pages in 40 days flat. I didn't know a thing about what I'm writing about the next paragraph. It's just, right. I didn't even have a structure. Arrive at Success, I had a structure to follow. This one, I was just pam, 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 pam. And it came out so beautifully in the form of habits for the self-renewal, for symbiotic renewal, and for systemic renewal. And that is about how we empower ourselves, get mind, body, spirit aligned through habits. How we do that around us, with people around us, with others, with the planet. In fact, the byline of this book is your unexpected role in saving the planet. So it's you, the individual, who has the power. And Gandhi said that. He's a lot smarter than I am, at least. He said, be the change you want to see in the world. How can you be the change? With what you do on a day-to-day basis. And that's what symbiotic renewal is about, how you change things around. And then systemic renewal, because we have been so busy being busy, that we have forgotten that there are certain systems that we designed which are not serving us, and we've got to go back to them. And this book, finally, Sachin, gave me the answer that I was searching for from 2005. Because this is what we can do to stop being part of the problem, start being part of the solution.
So initially, when you left the corporate world, you said that I didn't have a solution, but I didn't want to be part of the problem. But now you have a solution,
which is what we call the RENEWALism movement. So the funny thing was that around March, when I was, in fact, February, March, when I was sitting to edit what had suddenly appeared in my computer, I found that these lockdowns started. And, even before the lockdowns, we started getting mindful of wearing masks and stuff like that. And the habits begin with being aware about what are we doing. And, mindfulness is a habit to cultivate. Mindfulness brings down stress in multiple ways. And just working mindfully is important. But what is mindfulness? It's remembering to wear your mask, remembering what you're doing. So when the lockdowns came, I found that not only is this coronavirus pushing us into starting with self-renewal, it is also pushed us, hook, line, and sinker, into systemic renewal, because one of the habits talked about here is to explore telecommuting. One of the habits under systemic renewal is to explore online schooling and homeschooling and several others. In fact, at one point in time, I calculated out of the 30 habits, 10 in each section, 21 habits are directly or indirectly related to what the coronavirus has forced us into. And that's when I brought this book out. Yeah, please read the book. RENEWALism.com. You can get a copy. If you like PDFs, you can just put your email at the bottom of that site and you get it straight away. And that'll be very nice because you will save paper. Otherwise, you have the links to order on RENEWALism.com. Advertisement closed. Now, what's important is that I decided that I'm going to self-publish this book before we regress into our old habits, which I thought was going to happen in 6 months' time. We have now regressed into our old habits, which has happened after 3 years' time. And that is the tragedy. This movement did not get so much traction in 3 years, but this is what's driving this decade for me. And this movement is about people forming little clubs called renewal clubs, a little like Alcoholics Anonymous, where we're self-empowered, we're doing things because we're driven by a higher consciousness. And I'm very optimistic that this is the decade for renewal, because the last decade we saw another movement gain a lot of currency, and that's called the veganism. So what's veganism? Vegan is a person who is make small changes in their habits and lifestyle because they're driven by a higher consciousness about animal exploitation and survival. I'm going to say renewal is a small change in lifestyle and habits because you're driven by a higher consciousness concerning your own exploitation and survival, guys. So it's a little different from animals. This is what's happening in the BPL of the world. This is what's happening with consumerism. And this can change. And this is changing with Gen Z, with social media. This is gaining currency. And what I'm looking for now is implementing renewal habits in a structured manner at companies so that we get empirical data points to show that yes, following renewal habits, the test group has recorded 53% increase in engagement and team productivity and an 85% reduction in sickness and absenteeism, for example. And those are not numbers that you can ignore. You take them to the control group, you bring them into the culture of the company. So we're looking at stuff that happens over 6 months, over a year, sustainably to bring change in systems and in the individual consciousnesses and in the team interplays of collaboration across organizations.
Wow. On that note, I'm going to ask you a very important question, which is usually the last question, but I'm going to ask you right now. What's the best way that people can reach out to you, people who would like to be part of the renewalism movement?
The best way to reach me is sandeepnath.com, SANDEEPNATH.com. You have a link to renewalism right on top of that site, which would give you an idea of how it is beneficial for corporates as well as for educational institutions. I believe that if we can get students to understand these concepts at that age, they will not have the kind of stress that I had at the age of 17. I've been through that. I didn't know that those spectacles were a manifestation of stress till I could finally get rid of them because I stopped being stressed by that stuff, by any stuff. And you can get in touch with me from sandeepnath.com. It's got all the buttons on the right side top. And if you want to really explore the book, you want to read it for free, you want to see the preface, read the habits, RENEWALism.com. That's your site.
Right. So sandeepnath.com and renewalism.com. We're going to include those links in the show notes and in the description for YouTube. And looking back at your journey, Sandeep, from the from the young boy who wanted to be in the NDA. I mean, you already cleared your NDA as a teenager, to the conscious businessman, the conscious entrepreneur that you've become. Looking at this journey, who would you like to give the credit to or thank for your success in your life?
You ask great questions, Ajahn. I wonder how much time you're giving me for this one.
Take your time as much as you want.
You know, why I say that is because there's a dedication in this book, and I want to read that out to you. Since you have given me the time, but I read out only one paragraph. This book is dedicated to my mother, and that's because she relayed my purpose in life to me while I was still being nurtured in her womb. She spoke with me while I was there, urging me to live life unchained to standard societal expectations. She instructed me to stay liberated and to teach the world how to do the same, to facilitate the raising of consciousness by making changes in the way we think of our lives, our priorities, our jobs, keeping busy, raising kids, and all that. 42 years passed before I could revisit that sounding deep in my subconscious. It arose through a meditative connection with my inner power. And when my mother reconfirmed that this dialogue had actually occurred with me in her womb, that was the day I felt released to the world in a real sense. And life has been incredible ever since. So thanks, Mom.
Brilliant. That's well written. I've read this part. I've read the book, and I haven't completed the book yet. I'm in the middle so far, but I've read the preface and I've read this part, and I was touched, and I am again, and so are the listeners, the audience now. Sandeep, what would be, like, your one advice, if you would just give like one piece of advice to the people who are working at a job right now and want to become an entrepreneur? What's your advice for them?
Find somebody you want to be like. See if you can connect with them and value everything that they tell you once you've connected. Because they're going to be invested in you so long as they know that you are valuing what they're saying. And the only reason why you are approaching them and you are going to value their advice is because they are where you want to be. That's
Absolutely. Wow. That's the power of mentorship, the Guru Shishya Parampara that we have in our culture as well. And just yesterday was Teachers' Day, so this is like a fantastic time. I mean, today we're recording this on the 6th of September. 5th of September is Teachers' Day in India. And so, Sandeep, how was your experience being on the Be Your Own Boss podcast?
very enjoyable. Lovely free time conversation. As I've been saying repeatedly, you ask great questions. You really help your interviewees.
Interviewee. Yeah.
At least you help me go deep into memories and things that make us as interviewees feel really happy to respond to and to think about and to share. So thank you so much. It's awesome.
Thank you. Actually, thank you for sharing your journey and your story with us, and going deep into your memories and bringing out those nuggets of wisdom and sharing those with us, Sandeep. Thanks for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing a journey. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that was Sandeep Nath, the founder of the RENEWALism Movement, and you've been watching and listening to Be Your Own Boss.